The sky of Vera was red like an open wound. Great ships burned above the clouds, falling like dying stars. The city below shook with thunder as towers crumbled into fire. Screams and alarms mixed into one endless sound. Queen Lyraven stood on the highest balcony of her crystal palace. Her silver crown was cracked, her armor scorched by smoke. She watched her people running through the streets. Her heart ached because she could not save them all. In the distance, the royal banners burned. She had sent her daughter, Princess Alira, to the front line only hours ago. Now the report said the regiment was gone, no survivors. The queen whispered her daughter's name into the wind. But the wind carried back only ashes. Her generals begged her to escape. The palace will fall, they said, but she refused. A ruler does not flee while her child burns, she answered quietly. Far above the planet, a single human ship drifted through the chaos. The crew of the Solace One had come to evacuate civilians. They heard hundreds of distress calls. But one signal cut through the static. A voice filled with sorrow. "This is Queen Lyraven of Vera, please. Someone save my child." Captain Elias Ward listened in silence. His crew waited for orders. Their ship already damaged from debris, the computer warned. Entering atmosphere will exceed safe temperature limits. Ward looked at the flames below and said softly, "Plot the course." "Sir, that's a suicide run," his pilot shouted, Ward replied. "Then let's make it count." The ship dove through the clouds, fire licking its wings. The hull screamed under pressure, alarms flashing red. Inside, the crew strapped in, whispering small prayers. Outside, the storm swallowed them whole. On the surface, the Queen felt a shock wave roll through the city. She looked up and saw a streak of light cutting across the smoke. Not a falling ship, a landing one. Hope flickered in her eyes for the first time. Captain Ward guided the Solace One into the ruins near the front line. Flames roared on every side. He and his small team stepped out in heat-proof armor. Their scanners showed faint life signs deeper inside the wreckage. Ward pointed forward. "That's where she is." They moved through burning corridors of metal and stone. Explosions shook the ground, sending shards flying. One soldier fell, hit by debris. Ward lifted him, dragging him forward without hesitation. Every second the air grew thinner, hotter, deadlier. At last they found the royal insignia half buried under rubble. Beneath it lay a small figure in broken armor, Princess Alira. Her pulse was weak, her breathing shallow. Ward knelt beside her and removed his own oxygen mask. He placed it over her face. "Breathe, come on, breathe," he said. The girl gasped once, then again, life flickering back. His crew shouted through the smoke, "Captain, we can't stay. The reactor's going critical." Ward looked down at the unconscious princess and nodded. "Then we leave together." He lifted her into his arms. The heat melted the edges of his armor. Flames rolled across the street like waves. Every step was pain, every breath fire, but he kept moving. Above the city, the Queen's palace began to collapse. She stood in silence, believing the end had come. Then a voice crackled through the palace comms. "Your Majesty, this is the human ship Solace One. We have her." For a moment she thought it was a dream. Then she fell to her knees and whispered, "Thank you." Ward reached his ship just as the ground erupted behind him. He threw the princess into the arms of a medic. The door sealed, the ship lifted, flames chasing its tail. When they broke through the clouds, the crew cheered weakly. Ward sat against the wall, his armor steaming. He smiled through the smoke. "She's safe," he murmured, then closed his eyes. From space, the Queen watched through the last working monitor. A small human ship rising out of the fire carrying her child. Her heart broke and healed at the same time. For the first time in history, an alien queen bowed her head to a human. The planet of Vera burned below. But in the darkness above it, hope had taken shape. A single human ship carrying a life. A single act that would be remembered for 1,000 years. The Solace One drifted in orbit above the burning world. Its hull was scarred, half the lights dead, the air heavy with smoke and silence. Inside the med bay, the princess lay on a stretcher, her pale skin glowing faintly under the dim lights. Captain Ward sat beside her, his arm bandaged. His armor still black with ash, every breath hurt, but he refused to rest. The medic looked up and said softly, "She'll live, sir, but she needs royal treatment." "Alien blood, alien tech," Ward nodded. "Then set a course for their capital," he said. His pilot hesitated. "Sir, they might shoot us down." "They still think humans are scavengers." Ward smiled faintly. "Then we'll give them a reason to think again." As the Solace One entered the alien atmosphere, Alarms blared, defense satellites locked on, sending warnings in bright alien runes. The Queen's guards saw an unregistered human ship descending through the clouds. They prepared to fire. Inside the ship, Ward sent a single transmission. "This is Captain Elias Ward. I'm returning someone who belongs to you." Moments later, the palace comms flickered to life. The Queen's advisor shouted, "Your Majesty!" "The human claims to have the princess." Lyraven froze where she stood. "Bring them in," she whispered. Her generals protested. "It could be a trick." She turned, her eyes cold. "Then it is one I am willing to risk." The Solace One landed in the courtyard surrounded by alien soldiers. Their weapons glowed blue, their faces full of fear and anger. Ward stepped down carrying the unconscious princess in his arms. Smoke still rose from his armor. He walked forward slowly. "I come in peace," he said quietly. The soldiers didn't move. One shouted, "Stay where you are, human!" Ward ignored the threat and kept walking. The Queen appeared at the top of the marble steps, her gown torn, her crown dull from ash. When she saw the girl in his arms, she stopped breathing. Her legs trembled as she descended the stairs. The crowd watched in silence. Ward knelt before her and said softly, "She's alive." She fought hard. Then his strength gave out and he collapsed at the Queen's feet. The courtyard erupted in chaos. Medics rushed forward, lifting both the human and the princess. The Queen followed, her eyes locked on the man who had walked through fire for her child. For hours the palace was silent except for the sound of heart monitors and med drones. At dawn the princess opened her eyes and whispered, "Mother." Lyraven fell to her knees beside the bed, tears shining like crystal. Outside, soldiers gathered in confusion. They could not understand why their queen would cry over a stranger's courage. But whispers began to spread. "The human saved her," one said. "He went into the fire for someone not his own," said another. The guards looked at the sky, wondering what kind of creature would do such a thing. In the medwing, Ward slowly regained consciousness. His body was wrapped in bandages, the smell of alien herbs in the air. A voice spoke softly beside him. "You disobeyed your command orders." Ward turned his head to see the Queen standing there, her armor replaced by a simple white cloak. "I did," he said. "But I made a promise." "To who?" she asked. "To the little girl I saw under the rubble," he said. "I promised she'd see her mother again." The Queen's expression softened. "No one has ever crossed that battlefield and lived," she said quietly. Ward looked down at his hands, rough and burned. Then maybe they never had something worth crossing for. For a long moment neither spoke. Then the Queen did something no one in her court had ever seen. She bowed. "Human," she said, "you have my kingdom's debt." Ward shook his head weakly. "I didn't do it for a kingdom," he said. "I did it because someone had to." Word of the rescue spread faster than light. Across allied worlds and enemy colonies, the same question was asked. Why would a human risk everything for an alien princess? No one had an answer. But everywhere, soldiers began whispering a new name for humanity. The race that carries hope. Days later, the Queen held a ceremony in the Hall of Stars. The banners of 1,000 alien houses lined the walls. At the center stood Captain Ward, still limping, his uniform patched and faded before all who watched. The Queen lifted a blade of crystal light and said, "This man crossed the fire that took everything, and returned with life." She touched the blade to his shoulder. "Elias Ward, you are now guardian of hope to the royal line of Vera." The crowd bowed. For the first time in centuries, alien voices spoke a human name with respect. The Queen looked at him and whispered, "You walked through death itself." Ward smiled slightly. Then maybe it was worth it. And high above the palace, where the flames of war had once burned, the night sky shimmered with new stars, each one reflected in the eyes of those who watched, every one of them thinking the same thought, that sometimes the smallest species carried the greatest heart. The halls of the Veran Palace had never been so quiet. Once they rang with the sound of war drums and command orders. Now every step echoed like a prayer. Queen Lyraven walked alone through the corridor of crystal light. Her reflection followed her in the shining walls. A queen who had ruled through strength but lost through pride. She paused at the door of the medical chamber. Inside, the human slept, his body wrapped in healing threads. Machines hummed softly around him. Their light washing his scarred face, he looked peaceful, though every scar on his skin told stories of pain. For a moment she simply stood there watching, then she whispered, You crossed the fire for a child not your own. Behind her, her advisor entered quietly. My queen, the council grows restless, he said. They question your mercy toward this creature. She turned to him, her eyes cold and distant. Creature, she repeated slowly. He saved the future of our bloodline. The advisor hesitated. With respect, Majesty, he is still human, a soldier of a race known for chaos. Lyraven looked back at the sleeping man. Then perhaps chaos is what we needed to remind us of order, she said softly. Outside the palace, the city was rebuilding. The fires had faded, leaving behind smoke and ashes. But among the ruins stood alien children playing beside human engineers. The humans had stayed to help repair the damage. No payment, no reward, only quiet hands rebuilding what others had destroyed. The alien citizens watched in silence. No one understood why, but they could not look away. In the royal chamber, the queen summoned the council. Hundreds of alien nobles filled the room with whispers and pride. They bowed, their jewels glittering, their eyes full of suspicion. Lyraven raised her hand, silencing them. Today we speak not of war or conquest, she said, but of the human who carried my daughter from the flames. The nobles shifted uncomfortably. One of them, a high general, spoke with disdain. Your Majesty, one act of courage does not erase their nature. Lyraven's gaze turned sharp. And what is our nature, General? She asked. He stammered, to rule, to command, to survive. The queen's voice hardened. Then we have ruled, commanded, and survived, yet our world still burned. The hall fell silent. Her voice softened. But he, she said, pointing toward the balcony, that human, he crossed death itself not to conquer, but to save. While we fled, he returned to the fire. She looked at her generals one by one. Tell me, which of you would have done the same? No one answered. Even the proudest warrior lowered his eyes later, when the council dismissed. The queen went to her daughter's chamber. Princess Alira sat by the window, her eyes distant, her arms still bandaged. When she saw her mother, she smiled faintly. Mother, did you speak to him? She asked. I did, the queen said softly. But he sleeps still. The girl's eyes glowed with quiet strength. He didn't let go. Even when I couldn't breathe, she whispered. He kept saying, You'll see her again. Tears filled the queen's eyes. My child, she said, kneeling beside her. You owe your life to him. Princess Alira shook her head. No, mother, she said gently. We all do. That night, Lyraven couldn't sleep. She walked to the balcony overlooking the horizon. The stars burned bright, reflecting on the broken lands below. She closed her eyes and remembered the centuries of pride. Her people had believed themselves perfect, superior, untouchable, yet it was a human, fragile, mortal, reckless, and who had shown them what it meant to care. In the dark, she whispered, We built walls around our hearts and called it civilization, but he walked through our fire and called it hope. The next morning, the queen visited the medbay again. This time the human was awake, sitting weakly on the bed. He tried to stand when she entered, but she raised a hand. Rest, Captain Ward, she said. Her voice soft but firm. He nodded, wincing. I heard your people call me reckless, he said with a half smile. They're not wrong, she replied. And for the first time she smiled back. Why did you do it? She asked after a pause. Your world was dying, your people hated us. Yet you came. Ward looked out the window. His gaze distant because someone had to, he said. And because a child's cry sounds the same in every language. Lyraven said nothing for a long time. Then she placed her hand over his. You have reminded us what we forgot, she said. He tilted his head slightly. And what's that? She smiled faintly. That strength is not power. It's compassion. The guards outside watched as their queen bowed her head for the second time in their lifetime. Not to a god, not to a conqueror, but to a man who had carried her child through smoke and steel. And from that moment, something changed in the heart of Vera. For the first time in their history, the people began to whisper a word they had never used before. Not fear, not obedience, but gratitude. And beside that word was always one name, human. The sons of Vera rose pale and quiet. Smoke still hung above the horizon. But the people who once bowed only to power now paused to watch the rebuilding. And in the middle of it all stood a single human. Captain Elias Ward walked slowly through the royal gardens. his steps careful, his arms still stiff from the burns. Everywhere he looked, alien eyes followed him, some filled with respect, others with confusion. To them, he was both hero and mystery, a creature who had crossed the fire for no reward. The queen watched from her balcony. Her daughter stood beside her, stronger every day. "He doesn't act like a conqueror," the princess said softly. Lyraven smiled faintly. "No," she whispered. "He acts like someone who carries a promise." In the courtyard below, soldiers were training. They moved in new ways now. No longer shouting, no longer competing. Their rhythm followed the human drills Ward had shown them. Step, breathe, hold, move. They learned balance before strength, patience before attack, and for the first time in generations, their training sounded like silence. One of the queen's generals approached. "My queen, our warriors now train as humans do," he said with a frown. "It makes them slower." The queen looked down at the courtyard. "It makes them wiser," she replied. Perhaps wisdom was what we were missing. That evening, Ward was summoned to the throne room. He bowed stiffly, unused to royal ceremony. The hall was full of nobles, their eyes sharp and judging. Lyraven sat on her throne, the princess beside her. "You saved my daughter," the queen said, "and with her, my heart. But you disobeyed your command orders, risking war." Ward nodded. "I did," he said simply. A murmur spread through the court. The queen raised her hand. "Why?" she asked. Ward's answer was soft but clear. "Because when you make a promise, you keep it, even if it burns you." The hall fell silent. The queen leaned forward slightly. "To whom did you make this promise?" she asked. "To myself," he said. "Long before I ever met your people." Her golden eyes softened. "What kind of promise was that?" "That I'd never let another child die alone if I could stop it," he said quietly. He looked up then, his gaze steady and tired. "War takes too much, Majesty," he said. "Somebody has to carry what's left." There was a long silence. Even the guards seemed to forget to breathe. The queen finally stood and stepped down from her throne. She stopped before him and placed her hand over his chest plate. "Then you carry more honor than any general I have ever known," she said. Ward bowed his head slightly. "I just kept my word," he replied. After that day, everything changed. The queen ordered the creation of a new unit, the Guardians of Hope, a team made of humans and aliens trained under Ward's guidance. Their symbol was a flame held inside an open hand, and their first mission was not war but rescue. When natural disasters struck nearby colonies, the Guardians arrived first. When rebel ships attacked refugee transports, the Guardians defended them. They became a symbol of unity, a reminder that strength without compassion was hollow. But not everyone welcomed the change far away. In the dark chambers of the Galactic Council, whispers grew. "The Queen bows to a human," said one ambassador. "She weakens her bloodline with mercy," hissed another. Yet others said nothing because deep down, they had seen the same broadcast, a single man carrying a dying princess through fire. And even they could not deny the truth of that image. Back on Vera, the queen walked the palace gardens with her daughter. Princess Alira was strong again, her laughter returning to the halls, but sometimes she grew quiet, staring at the scars on Ward's hands. "Mother," she said one evening, "does he ever rest?" Lyraven looked at the man in the distance, helping a child fix a broken drone. "No," she said softly. "Humans rarely rest, Mar. They rebuild." Later that night, Ward stood on the same balcony where the queen had once watched her world burn. The city below glowed with lights instead of fire. He closed his eyes, breathing the cool air. For the first time in years, the silence felt peaceful, not empty. The queen joined him, standing beside him without a word. After a while, she spoke quietly. "Do you ever regret coming here?" Ward shook his head. "No," he said. "Some fires are worth walking through." She smiled faintly. "And what did you find on the other side of ours?" He looked at her, his expression calm. "Hope," he said simply. Behind them, the twin moons rose over a city being rebuilt by two species. Children of both races played together under the lights, and the night carried a whisper through every street. The human kept his promise. Years passed, and the scars of Vera faded. The fields that once burned now bloomed with silver grass under twin suns. Cities that had been ash now glowed with crystal spires and laughter. And in every rebuilt district one symbol appeared, an open hand holding a flame. The Guardians of Hope had become legend, humans and aliens serving together, rescuing instead of conquering, Their motto was simple: carry the light where others fall, and at the heart of it all was the name Elias Ward. He had refused titles, refused gold, refused command. He lived in a small home near the royal gardens. Children of both species came every morning to train. He taught them how to move, how to breathe, how to stand again after falling. And when they asked why he fought, he always said, "Because someone has to carry hope when no one else can." The queen often watched from the balcony, her daughter now a grown woman who ruled beside her. Together they kept the alliance alive. No borders, no hierarchy, just shared survival. Trade flowed, old enemies spoke again, and slowly the galaxy began to heal. But peace never lasts forever. One night a warning reached the palace. A dying star in the outer rim had collapsed, threatening to swallow nearby worlds. Evacuation was impossible. Ships jammed, stations overloaded, panic spreading through the system. The queen looked to her council. "We can save them," she said, "but we'll need the guardians." Ward was already ready when the call came. His armor old but polished, his eyes calm. He led the rescue fleets into the dying system. The sky burned bright red as the star tore itself apart. Thousands of ships screamed for help. Ward's voice came through every channel. "Stay calm, follow formation. We leave no one behind." Even as radiation storms melted steel, he refused to turn back. He guided ships through debris fields and firestorms. When one transport lost power, he docked manually, carrying children through corridors filled with smoke. He gave his oxygen to a soldier, his shield to a stranger. And when the last ship escaped, his signal went silent. Back on Vera, the queen waited at the control deck. The reports came in, millions saved, but the Solace One lost to the fire. She closed her eyes, her voice breaking. "He kept his promise again," she whispered. Days later, fragments of his ship drifted into orbit. Among them, a single data core still burning faintly with blue light. Inside was his final message: "If someone finds this, remember, peace isn't given, it's carried. Carry it for me." The queen ordered a monument built on the highest hill of the capital. At its center stood a statue of a human holding a small child. Behind it burned an eternal flame, blue and gold. At the base were carved his last words: "Carry it for me." On the day of its unveiling, every world of the Alliance went dark for 1 hour. No lights, no engines, no transmissions. Only silence, signed to honor the man who had once walked through the fire. Then the stars lit up again one by one, each system igniting a beacon shaped like the open hand of the Guardians. From space, the galaxy shimmered like a living constellation, a single phrase repeating across every channel: "Humanity carried hope, now we carry it too." Generations passed. Children grew, learning his story not as legend but as lesson. They said the human heart was forged from pain, but shaped by mercy, and whenever storms threatened new worlds, the first ships to arrive carried the same emblem: an open hand and a flame. At night, the queen, now older, would walk to the monument and speak softly: "You walked through the fire for my daughter, for my world, for us all." The wind would answer with the faint hum of engines, and she would smile because she liked to believe he still listened. Somewhere among the stars, still watching, still carrying hope.